holidays! I'm Merrily Duffy, and I'd like to welcome you to episode 13 of the Casual Temple. Today, I'll be talking to you, the audience, about the approaching new year, 2024, and will reveal what untold gifts from the numbers, stars, and cards the coming year holds. But first, before we begin unwrapping our potential and holding our fates in our hands to mold, let's briefly address the proverbial elephant in the room, the number of the episode, 13. Borrowing the god Kronos' time machine for a minute, we see that the number 13 holds a special significance across many traditions, speculated to be due to the ancients' observance of a lunar solar calendar, 12 full months and the odd seasonally aligned 13th, slightly less than half in its length. It's the inconstant nature of the 13th moon that lends the number its superstitious concern, though surprisingly, in contrast to contemporary practice, more often auspiciously potent than ill-divining portent. For every missing elevator button or horror movie Friday, in the here and now, there are many lucky correspondences woven into the wisdom of the past for you to discover. I encourage you to do a little research and read about them so you can cast off any trepidation. The charged wobbliness of 13 is similar to the infinitely turning and racing number 8, the magician's main snaky sign of power and change, which happens to be encoded through 2024, which we will get into as we go along. So this week we're doing something a little different in that there isn't a guest this week. We just, in recording this is the day after Christmas. For the new year, it would be interesting to review the collective energy of 2023 first. So that's what we'll do. And then the upcoming energy of 2024 using the divinatory methods that I use in my practice, the numerology and tarot through the lens of the Hermetic Qabalah. And I'm sure the planets will make an appearance as we go along as well. First off, I did want to quickly talk about the year of the water rabbit, then the significance of the number 13. First off, I want to quickly talk about the year of the water rabbit. Then we will take a look back at 2023 as it pertains to numerology, Gematria, and the Qabalah tree of life. I will look at the tarot cards that relate to 2023. I will also share my own personal year number for 2023 and what events occurred to match that energy for me. So we'll look at basically the past before we kind of dive into the future energy of 2024. Then we will look at 2024, which is represented by the wood dragon in the Chinese Zodiac, then the number 8 in Hebrew and Gematria. We will then also take a look at the number 8 in the tarot and how that helps us understand that collective energy. I'll then do a 3-card spread reading for 2024 for the collective energy of our planet in this timeline and dimension. This will help us harness that energy that is available to us and move into the direction of our own true wills. Finally, I'll share some of the things I do in the new year to help guide and anchor my own intentions that will hopefully be useful or an inspiration for you to do your own intention setting. Okay, let's jump, let's jump into reflections of 2023. We'll look back before we look forward. So 2023 was the year of the water rabbit, which oddly enough is about reflection and seeking balance as a collective and individually. So I look at these things as macro and micro, so as a collective and then on an individual basis. And so 2023 numerology adds up to the number 7. And in Hebrew, the character that the Hebrew letter that the Hebrew letter Zayin, which in Gematria matches to Bina on the tree of the Kabbalistic tree of life. Bina is the great mother that is the emanation of the supernal triangle. So you have Keter, Chokhmah in Bina, and it is the supernal it is the supernal Sephira that gives us our form. So that is Bina. Bina is also linked to the planetary energy of Saturn, who is the lord of karma of individuals and of the collective, of course. So when I speak of the collective, I mean like basically humanity in this dimension, in this time. on the planet Earth. The word Zion itself is a paradox since it means weapon or sword, as well as crown and scepter. Zion is the root word for the modern Hebrew word mazon, which means food or sustenance, and the word Hosanna, which means nourishment. As a collective, we are facing times of conflict, facing our karma and the forms we have brought to the earthly plane. Within that conflict and struggle, there lies the promise of calm and serenity. The seventh card of the major arcana is the Chariot. Chariot is a card of energy moving forward towards a spiritual quest. In the Rider-Waite-Smith, the Chariot card is driven, or the Chariot is driven by a black and white sphinx, representing the two pillars in the Qabalah tree of life, the masculine and the feminine energies that create the motion moving us forward. The sphinxes are the question, the quest, and the riddle of our lives we are trying to answer. So again, this is like the larger picture, and then us as individuals and thinking about what was going on in 2023. There was a lot of action and movement. And in karma, karma is really, there's different ways of looking at karma. I kind of think of karma as, the unbalance of the true nature of, of spirit. So it's not a bad or good thing. It just means we're trying to rebalance, and the Chariot is on its mission to do that. And so with 2023, we saw a lot of conflict on the earth that, was really troubling to see. And, that is part of sort of rebalancing the karma of the planet. But with that, there are beautiful, good things I've seen locally that people have been trying to do, sort of ease the suffering and of people here, even in Seattle. So there is there is the rebalancing effect of karma. And so and the number, okay. Okay, and then so I'll just share that. So for my personal year, there's a personal year number that you can kind of figure out yourself by adding up all the numerical values of your birthday. So the two digits, for your month, day, and then 4 digits for your year. And then to kind of combine that with the overall year number, so 2023, which was 7, you would get so 7 plus whatever the number your birth year was, and then you reduce it down to like one whole number. And that would give you your personal year number. So my personal year number for 2023 was 6. In the Qabalah tree of life, 6 is associated with Netzach, which is the sphere of Venus, which rules over our personal relationships. So kind of defining that for me in the last year was I went on a trip to the Philippines with my mother and my sister and her 2 sons, which is, Philippines is where my mom is from. And we went there to meet with her family and then celebrate her 70th birthday. And I was also born in the Philippines. Don't remember much because I was only there for a year and a half. Then just this December, just a few weeks ago, I went with 2 of my friends to Ireland, where my dad's family is from. So it was a time of connecting to my father's and my ancestral roots, and also spending time with 2 friends that I've known for over 20 years. So it was, it was kind of a nice cap to the year of sort of this Venus energy of like relationships and coming together and, kind of looking after that for myself. I'm curious, if you would like to share what your reflections of 2023 are. I'd love to hear about it in the comments. What things you found looking back do kind of relate to that particular number. And yeah, we can then do our preview for the new year and kind of go and move in that direction. So 2024 is the year of the wood dragon. So you may or may not be familiar that Chinese Zodiac has the different animals, but the different animals will have like a different element because the Chinese system is very much very much into like elements and things like that. So this year is the wood dragon, which is around evolution, improvement, abundance, and setting the foundation for long-term success. So like wood in maybe the Western traditions is associated with fire and creative energy. So you can kind of look at it through your West. If you're in the West, you can kind of look at the Western interpretation of that, of like maybe there's something about creativity and setting things into motion and that spark of like an idea and kind of getting that started. And dragons for me, like I've kind of meditated on what dragons are as an like a spiritual energy, spiritual guide energy. So what I've kind of got from my own meditations and communing with those energies is that they are an energy that was present at the creation if of our material world. So the material world here that we exist on Earth. Yeah, for dragons as an energy, they are associated with sort of the primordial energy that was present at the start of the universe and definitely the start of the creation of the material world that we exist in. So they are these ancient creator beings, and also they're divided up in the different elements as well. So they are like a really cool energy to look at as far as kind of imagining, you know, like what a dragon would be involved in creating the universe or the material world. And also something to share because I live here in Seattle. Oh, and so another thing to share is that the dragon energy was present at the creation of the universe and definitely at the creation of the material world. The dragon energy is something that is very interesting to look into and experience for yourself. So another thing to think about is that I live here in Seattle, and my Kundalini yoga teacher, Sada Simran, would always tell us that Seattle had dragon, or his teacher told him that Seattle had dragon energy. And so I was kind of like figuring out what that really meant because that's all he said. He didn't really say what that meant, but Seattle historically, in at least the modern age has been a boom and bust town. So a lot of businesses, started and ended here. And a lot of like the economy kind of has rises and bumps and all sorts of things. But I also look at it as that there is a lot of creative energy that exists in Seattle. A lot of forward thinking technology has come out of Seattle as far as like something that has been developed by individuals or a company, and then kind of delivered to the collective. So I kind of look at it in that way as well. So maybe that's something to consider as we move into, when the Chinese New Year starts, what the year of the wood dragon would mean to you and how you can harness that energy for yourself. Okay. So 2024 numerologically starts is the number 8. And 8 in Hebrew is associated with the letter chet. Western, maybe English speaking people would pronounce it chet because it starts with a ch, but I believe it's like chet, like a very kind of guttural pronunciation. It means life, new beginnings. And when you look at the way that it is drawn, the character itself, it looks like a bridge or a doorway. And so it's not a door, but it's a doorway. And so it's a liminal space of transformation. So it's also linked to this Semitic word for thread, which is also links to the Egyptian word wick, of a candle. So if you think about like thread, and then the wick of a candle is basically a thread. Um, in Egyptian hieroglyphs, in meditation, I've kind of meditated on uh, the wick in Egyptian hieroglyphs, and it symbolizes the weaving of your fates. Um, you can weave your fates, but it could also be like changed or paused. Like if you blow out a candle, you're kind of like definitely adjusting your fates. Um, and also, if you think about the act of like a breath, it connects your fate. Your fate is connected to the act of speech and of prayer. So these are ways that you could weave your own destiny. And I'll just share that in my own practice. I've, kind of learned that actually speaking things out loud is very, very powerful. There's a lot of intention setting you can do inside your head, and that works as well. But I feel like if you're really wanting to adjust the track of your life, and I kind of see these things as tracks. I know we're talking about threads, but you can see them as threads. I kind of see the options of your life are kind of laid out in railroad tracks. And so if you want to move over a few railroad tracks from where you are, there's going to be a little bit more energy. There's more energy you would need to put into that because there's more effort. And the reason I like the imagery of a railroad track is I'm sure you've seen those like old fashioned black and white films where there would be some guy that would have to actually switch the track, right? He would have to go in and like pull this lever, it would switch the track. So I think of that is, the way as like a magician, we're switching the tracks over to one we can see the potentials, right? We can see the potentiality of, where our life can go. And this way you get to choose instead of like having that defined for you by somebody else. So that's why I really love the idea of, I think prayer is a wonderful thing if you want to, to help people around you, to help yourself, to commune with divinity. So prayer and speaking your intentions really helps you to weave your own destiny. Um, and the number 8, so I'm a Hermetic Kabbalist, so we're going to talk about the Kabbalah for sure. So 8 is associated to the Sephira of Hod on the Tree of Life. Hod is an interesting energy. It is the energy of the magician. Hod is associated to the planet Mercury. So there's a lot of correspondences there with like the magician and that sort of energy. So the gods I tend to think about when I'm thinking about Hod are Mercury, Hermes, and Tout, because they're also associated with uh, wisdom, writing, communication, and magic. So 8 is a really like transformative number, if you want to think about it that way. So Hod for me, and what I've sort of read other people have said, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the wick, with like the thread, weaving your own destiny, prayer. So Hod is the way of reflection and prayer, and then setting into conscious motion your own destiny. So I'd like to take a look at a couple tarot cards just to define a little bit better what that energy is. So here uh, is the Magician card. It is the first card after the Fool card, so it's card number 1. I picked it though because we're talking about the 8, the 8th year. The 8 years connected to Hod, connected to the Magician, the tarot card. So we're going to talk about that. So the Magician, if you look at the Magician here, they have all the tools they need in front of them. They understand the tools to make uh, their intentions, their will known in the material world. So of course you're going to notice, because we're talking about the 8, that there is a lemniscate, or the infinity symbol, as most people would know it, above the magician's head. However, it's on its side. And so that's, kind of, again, thinking like why would the why would it be on its side? And so to me, it's, kind of again representing the motion of energy between the two pillars of masculine and feminine pillars of the tree of life. So it's on its side because there's a constant shifting of that energy, right? Um, so in so as we know it, the infinity symbol is something that means decorated with ribbons in Latin. And in Greek, it means simply ribbon. So again, we're going back to sort of what we talked about before about ribbons or thread and wicks and ribbons. There's like a continuing sort of corresponding theme about eight, right? And then what that means and what we can derive from that in our own uh, way for 2024. So also, if you think about, a lot of these symbols are 2D, right? They're recorded on tarot cards, they're recorded in books and scriptures, on tablets. But if you think about this symbol of the lemniscate, the infinity symbol, as a 3D object, you can see how it resembles a torus, right? That shape, which is a closed form containing a rotating curve. So I always think of a torus as an object of constant refinement, right? If you look at how you've maybe have seen visualizations of a torus, it's holding its shape, but it's in a constant state of like renewal. It's like, refinement. It's like I think of somebody like mining for gold, in a river or something. You're trying to get to the gold of something. It's like shaking out all of the things that aren't true, that aren't you, that aren't the gold. So that's what I think of it when I think of a torus. And think of this sort of moving energy. As we look at the eighth card of the major arcana uh, of the tarot, in addition to the magician, so the eighth card is the strength card. And again, you can see that there is that over her head is another lemniscate, another infinity symbol. I love this card because most people, when they look at it, they kind of get a really cool, like pretty immediate interpretation around sort of like either like the taming of animal or anger or something energy with something soft and feminine. Like there's like another approach to manage sort of very forceful, fierce energy, right? A lot of people kind of get that from this card. And I think that's a really good impression of when you see this card. It's a really good one. I tend to see something a little deeper when I look at it, however, in sort of my own practice uh, around, again, another refinement, right? Like what makes us strong? What makes, metal strong is you're, again, refining it, taking out all the impurities, making it something that's very strong and useful and valuable. So, um, so it's kind of so I look at this card as understanding our own true strengths and our weaknesses. Here you have this sort of earthly angelic woman who's silently subduing a lion, which is a solar symbol. And the sun is linked to Tippereth on the tree of life, which is the highest spiritual manifestation of knowledge that can be achieved on the material plane. Right? There's other Sephiroth above Tippereth. Those are very, those are of their own nature, but Tippereth is a pretty high manifestation and understanding of that knowledge on the material plane. So the sun and the lion here is also a representation of our egos, which does not need to be killed or dispersed, but treated in a way of acceptance with serenity, calm, and patience, right? That's what we get from this card. We get that this woman is approaching this situation, which would be frightening, with serenity, calm, and patience. So this is the strength in ourselves, like understanding where we are weak and where we are strong. And so now we can develop a plan on the way forward, backed by our own wisdom and understanding. of our own shadows and light. Because in this card, as she's representing sort of the higher energies of the feminine principle, but also um, the the earthly, achievement of that principle. Like that's really what it's showing us here. So we now have a plan to move forward, which is backed by our strength and wisdom of understanding. And we have all the tools we need. Our mind, soul, and spirit are in alignment. And now we can step forward and bring that reality into Malkuth in our material plane, which is awesome. All right, so now we're going to move on to the tarot that I pulled for 2024. I pulled 3 cards from the Rider-Waite Smith deck. They were really cool. I was very excited to see these because I didn't actually, I wrote all the stuff about eights before I even pulled these cards. So it was really cool that they fell the way they did, and I'm really excited to show them to you. So in the first position, we have the Hanged Man. This. Second position is the Lovers. Third position is the Sun. And so, first for the Hanged Man, I always see like contemplation and new perspective, right? I think most people see that when they see the Hanged Man. He doesn't look like he's suffering. He's kind of relaxed, kind of meditative in a way. So he's kind of seeing things from a different point of view. And the way I kind of read these cards is because they're in threes. This is sort of giving us like the past energy that we are starting the world out with. So this is sort of the past energy that we are going to be starting with 2023. We all have like a new perspective. We've been meditating on maybe, what a new world could look like, how we ourselves can assist in a new world and be that strong wisdom holding person moving into 2024. So also another thing to think of is there is sort of a negative connotation of the Hanged Man where it could be seen as like martyrdom and sacrifice. So those are things to kind of think about as well, like martyrdom and sacrifice. There may be some positive connotations seen to martyrdom as far as like a specific agenda being moved forward, but on a interpersonal level, that's something really people take on themselves. And, it's more out of some form of resentment or frustration with the relationships around them. And then the sacrifice, again, is really understanding you as a human, like, again, those strengths and weaknesses of what sacrifice actually is and, how that shows up in your life. And, what you truly want instead of having to sacrifice uh, your own true will, your own true you for other people. Not to say that you don't want to help other people and advance other people forward, but it's something to think about. Like, why are you doing those things? Is it to truly be of service, or is it something where you are trying to gain something just for your own ego or your own self? So something to think about. Another cool thing is the legs of the hangman are creating the number 4, which is the planetary number of Jupiter. Jupiter is the guru or prophet of the Zodiac. So that's kind of the guru energy. So it's like there's a lot of wisdom that we're starting 2024 with because we've had this new perspective, a lot of inner work that we've done as a collective on that kind of, working on the vision that we want to see. So, very cool. Hanged Man. So it's a great place to start, in my opinion, is we're starting from a place of wisdom and understanding. The second position is Lovers. So again, we talked how the Hebrew letter het looks like a bridge, looks like a doorway. And this particular card, I see the trinity of energies, right? It's the supernal triad. In um, in the Kabbalah, there's three triads, three triangles. There is a supernal triad is the Keter Chokmah Bina again, Bina showing up once more. So the masculine and feminine energies, sort of uh, the divine human divinity. Um, Generally, if you were talking about the supernal triangle, you would say, "Oh, is that Keter? Is that God?" I see this as like sort of the layering of the supernal triangle, also with a triangle of Tipperet that's created at the heart center. The angel is a solar angel. So it is like kind of combining the ideas of the human experience, the human destiny, the human balancing of those natures, but it's also so creating the solar Tipperet angel. And in this, the divine feminine in 2024 is going to play a really strong leadership role. Just by and this is like sort of in the heart of 2024. In this card, you see that the feminine figure, she's looking at the angel for guidance, looking at the angel for advice, looking at the angel for direction. The masculine figure, male figure, is looking towards the woman, right? For that, for it's his direction, his purpose. So I think that stepping in and having the feminine principle, the feminine, divine feminine, take a more active seat in the direction of how our energies are going to play out in 2024 is going to be huge. And I think we're going to see that. And so we talked about sort of the bridge of these energies. And so you have Hokmah is the great father, and then you have the great mother that is Binah on the Kabbalah tree of life. So, that is the communication, the bridges that we create between these two energies within ourselves, within the people around us, within sort of like those energies as a whole, becoming more familiar and more comfortable with our feminine energy and stepping into that is going to be only beneficial in 2024, really communing with that energy. And so the final position, everybody likes to see the sun in a tarot reading. So the sun card is where our energy, we're going to lead like the end of 2024 as a collective. We're going to be starting 2025 with a lot of sun energy, which is really exciting. So the sun, Leo, the child, the divine child, new beginnings, truth. The sun opens up, shines light on all dark places. So think of that too, because while this is a great card, there's a whole year to work through some of this energy. So if the dark places are going to be shown on that, we're going to have to look at a lot of really uncomfortable, horrible stuff as a collective human, a human race. So we really want to keep that in mind that, it's necessary to look at those dark things, but there's always the sun to come and help kind of let us understand that at the end that there's always a light at the end of the tunnel of looking at those dark places. And there's a lot of promise and new things that can be created from sweeping out all of that old dusty energy that we don't need any longer. So this, we talked about sort of the magician card, the 8. So here is a really good manifestation point, is ending with the energy of the sun. So that'll be a really strong jumping off point for that energy. So now that we've covered the energies that are at play, what can we do to harness that for ourselves? A simple way that is to set an intention for the year. knowing that the energy around the symbol of a doorway and bridge, the connection of the masculine and feminine energy, that you can invite that into your life and help and ask for, how do I recognize that? And have your, maybe ask your guides and your angels, your, whatever energies that you work with, how you can see it and how you can use it in your life. And since there's a strong call for the divine feminine, that's another energy that you really want to have some focus on. You can even do it in ways that you might not think would be helpful for you, but honoring the mothers, the sisters, the women in your life, honoring the ancestors, the female ancestors of your lineage, your living relatives, your friends, really like, seeing them as strong feminine forces that you appreciate and that you're happy to have them in your life. That will only, when you see that in others, you will see that in yourself. So that's why people are such great mirrors. They can help open that up, because it's harder to see it in yourself, but you can easily see wonderful qualities in other people. And that is only just, that is a way to really help us all step through that new doorway together. And so the doorway, again, is like the liminal space. It's where potentiality can happen. It's the passage, between two worlds, the old world and the new world we're trying to create. So some other things you can do is that you could create, like, some people create a vision board, some people create a vision box to, kind of put their intentions and objects in to help focus your energy for the year. I think that's a good thing to do. You can use any sort of intention or rituals that you see to help use that energy for your own benefit. Another thing too, to maybe consider if you haven't started doing it, I've been doing some lunar rituals with a group of friends of mine, and that has been really helpful. And again, that's inviting that divine feminine energy into your space and really considering what it means to kind of be on a cycle, right? Even like you create an intention, review at the end, did the intention happen? Why or why not? Let's set another intention. It's like it's a set it, review it, set it, review it. And it's again about that refinement, right? Refinement of yourself, refinement of what you want. It's always a process. Okay. So wow, we've done quite a bit. I'll just say some methods that I've done. They kind of get a little involved, but I'll just kind of talk through them. So I use sigils quite a bit in my practice. You can use any method of sigil making. I really love using the sigil engine, so sigilengine.com, which is a technomancy tool to draw the sigil for you after you basically type in your intention and it like creates a sigil for you. It's very cool. My husband does a really sweet thing when we go for walks and we see like a cat that is, or a cat or an animal that's missing on a poster, cat or a dog. He'll do a sigil like on the spot to, hopefully get the cat or the animal or the dog home safe and sound to its people. Because, that's again sort of putting that energy out into the world. Like you see it, you can do something about it. Like you can't, go and hunt for the dog. I mean, you could if you wanted to, but it's like you see it, you want it to change. You want it to change for a better railroad track for that energy to go down. Better energy for that railroad to go down. So that's what we want. I also use planetary energies to boost the energy of my sigil. So when I create and draw the sigil, I will like put, like if, let's say if I want to, more abundance, I would put Jupiter, symbols on it to kind of enhance that Jupiter energy that I want for more abundance in the year. And that, and the process of charging a sigil, like there's many methods. I don't exactly want to go into my process because it is kind of involved and it involves like other practices that I've incorporated, but you can kind of, either you can look up how other people might charge sigils. You can sit and meditate and like wait for your guides to tell you how you can charge sigils. Um, I like to charge them because it feels like I'm putting more intention, more focus. Like I understand the things that it needs to kind of let it go, and then I don't have to think about it, because that's the other thing too, is like letting the sigil go, let it do what it needs to do, and you don't have to like have all your control levers on it. And sometimes it depends. Like I might charge it. I kind of let the sigil tell me how long it needs to be charged for. And then I might burn it and then like release the ashes into the world. And that's kind of like another sort of sticking point of putting it into the world and let it do its own, let it go its own way, right? Without you having to think about all the details. Um, so yeah, I would say do a maybe play around with working with some sigils to set some of these intentions. You can do a sigil for inviting um, the balance of masculine and feminine energy. You can do a sigil for inviting the divine feminine into your life and letting it show you and teach you lessons. Yeah, there's many ways you could work on that for yourself, and all ways are valid. um, so we're kind of, and we're ending this particular episode here. I want to and I'd say if you're interested in a tarot reading from me, I have two options available on celestialringguidance.com. One is a one question email reading from me. So basically, you have a question, you email, and then like a few days later, I'll like send you a video of like the reading. Then the other is an hour-long Zoom meeting, so a face-to-face Zoom meeting uh, for whatever you want to talk about. Whatever questions you have. I do have sort of a general reading. If you're not quite sure what you want, or, haven't done tarot readings before, we can do like sort of a general check-in thing. And that usually is a good jumping off point. So, whatever helps you get more clarity around what you're trying to, what things are going on in your life, basically. So I'd love to hear your perspectives on 2024, or what methods you use to set intentions. Please leave a comment below. I always like learning new things. So, yeah, I'd love to see that. So I want to again say Happy New Year. Happy New Year to all the wonderful guests and all the wonderful listeners that have been tuning into the Casual Temple. It's been 3 months since I started releasing episodes, so it's been quite a fun time. So I really appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope that all of you have a wonderful 2024.
Your support means the world to us. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please take a moment to like, comment, and share it with others who might find this content valuable. And of course, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay tuned for more enlightening discussions. Your engagement helps us grow, and we appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for being a part of the Casual Temple community.